Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CSFL kickoff show. And we are back today, as usual, towards the end of the season with the CSFL Draft Lottery. And joining me today, I have the Carolina Panthers GM Kairos, who is a familiar guest onto the podcast. You've been here, Kairos, when you've had fantastic performances in the draft lottery and some terrible performances. How do you feel your luck is going to play out today?
About average. We'll find out. That way I'm not too wrong or too right. We'll see.
Yeah. Who knows?
I don't know if I've ever actually come up, though. I've stayed where I am, but I don't think I've ever come up.
No, I think you've been either up or I think you may have dropped 5 places, a couple of maybe last draft or the one before, I believe.
I think if I'm remembering correctly, since we did the new system after like the second or third draft, I think I dropped the maximum amount every year until last year.
Okay, so
yeah, I dropped
anything's an improvement this year then. But speaking of system, let's quickly just run through for those new GMs who've joined the league since the beginning of the season, just talk them through how the draft lottery works. So very quickly, essentially what happens is the 20 teams that don't make the playoffs, as you can see here, we list down the number of wins that the teams have, and then we essentially group them by lottery. So essentially the team that has the most number of wins in the non-playoff teams will get one chance at winning the number one overall pick, and then we stagger it upwards from 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, etc., depending on the number of wins. So you'll probably see that there's a gap between 7-win team and a 5-win team, just to account for the 2-win sort of difference between the two. So what this does is it essentially gives everyone a shot at winning the number one overall pick if you don't make the draft. The other thing to say is that any team in here, the maximum number of spaces that they can move down in the draft is 5. That's to prevent, some crazy decision making by the lottery gods and moving teams out of position, which I'm sure Toasty, who was the Bills GM and now the Pittsburgh GM, can give you a real good spiel about, because that was essentially why that rule was put in place for him. So the way we do this, obviously, is we don't necessarily do this by myself and Kairos picking random numbers as we used to. We actually have, and I'll go to that screen now, a bunch of code that Noah, the Denver Broncos GM, has put together for us, which essentially runs that logic, and we get some percentage odds, and we essentially run through that. So that's essentially what we're going to do on the show. Kairos, you're going to be here to try and break down teams and what the who possibly needs the pick, who possibly is dropping and reacting as we go along. But I guess the first thing to say here is, out of the teams that are kind of in that sort of top 4, top 5 setting, we've got Seattle, Kansas, Oakland, Tampa, and Pittsburgh. What's your take in terms of which one would you like to see take the number one pick out of those top 5 teams?
I think any of those top 4 could use quite a bit of talent, but I'd be interested to see what Tampa Bay can do with the top pick. I haven't really looked too deep into the class yet. I don't know if there's a franchise quarterback available, but it'd be interesting to see what any of those teams would be able to do with, a superstar player.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, for me, I think the interesting one is Seattle. I mean, they've kind of had a couple of GM changes over the past few seasons, experienced GMs, new GMs, and kind of bounced from being a lottery team to being a playoff team. And they're back down there this year and had a bit of a tough run of it. So we'll certainly be interested to see if they can pick up someone. But I think you're probably right. I don't necessarily know if there's an elite quarterback in this draft class, like we did have with last year's class. But there's still some very viable players in there from what I remember. I think some names that people are kind of probably familiar with who are still playing now, actually. So hopefully that will translate into some sort of decent set of class players coming in sort of that top half of the first round. But I guess elsewhere, looking across the rest of the draft list here, are there any other sort of big standouts that you can sort of take away from this? I mean, I think probably the big one I can see is that the Seattle kind of have a couple of picks, they have a couple of chances, but anything else that you can kind of see?
Yeah, Seattle has the top odds, and then they've got another first later on, and then there's also one other team in there that has a couple of picks. I just lost it.
So Philadelphia have a couple as well, I believe.
Yeah. Philly has a couple. Does Pittsburgh have two? No, Pittsburgh just has one. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's kick this off. Let's get the odds running through this set of code. We can stop looking at this random screen. Right. So as you see, obviously, what it does essentially to begin with is it churns out the percentages of each team. And then once I hit the return button, the engine will pick a number, and then we'll get, this year is the first time we will actually get the logo of the team, hopefully, if I've put the right location in. So we'll actually have something to look at rather than just lines of text. But I think probably worth saying, Karis, before we kick off, that we had some slight adjustments to the percentages from what was on the server. The keen eye will have spotted that probably already, but the reason being is that I accidentally forgot that the difference between the team that won 5 games, team that won 7 games is there's two chances difference between the two, and I hadn't accounted for that when I quickly threw that up on the server this morning. So should we kick off, Cara? Shall we see who has the number 1 pick for the 2018 CSFL draft this year?
Let's do it. Any guesses?
Honestly, I think I just can sense the Texans jumping in here. I don't know why. Just have that feeling. What about yourself?
I was thinking one spot above you in Arizona.
Okay.
I think Arizona would benefit a lot from a top pick as well. So.
Okay, let's see. So the number 1 pick is going to the New Orleans Saints. Oh no. Okay.
Wow. Well,
okay.
My division's going to be really hard.
Yeah, that's.
Wow.
Hang on a second. Okay, I may have messed something up there.
Uh-oh.
So how do we? Right. Okay. So New Orleans Saints have got the number 1 pick. That's going to be the same, but basically what happened there was the next line of return wasn't there, so I was trying to bring that back. So what we can do, okay, give me 1 second, I just need to work this through. So it's still running. I'm just not sure where the output's coming from. Okay, so what I'll have to do, we're doing this on the fly a bit here, so I'm going to have to quickly change the draft length to 19 and quickly remove the Saints from the rest of the order. So it'll still keep the percentages the same because their odds will be gone, but just bear with me 1 second whilst I do that.
Okay.
So yeah, I had the same problem when I was running through and testing the logos earlier. Sometimes the logos are too big and it just spews out a bunch of.
Okay. There was also. Hang on. There was also. You want to scroll up a little that thing? Oh, okay. That's just the logos that can stay. Probably.
Yeah, it's just the logo. So what I've done, so anyone who's watching, is I've just removed the Saints pick from this, so everyone still has the same number of odds, etc. It's the same as them just being removed. So we'll have the recording anyway to prove that actually the Saints did have the number 1 pick, but we'll run it through again. And yeah, there we go. So we've got the right number of percentages now. Everyone's back in, but you'll probably see hopefully that the odds have jumped. Obviously, we'll have to bear in mind that the number 1 pick here has been selected, and we are going to be a pick ahead of where this is now. But unfortunately, there we go. I was showing off with the logos working, and it messed me up. But anyway, let's go to pick number 2. So actually, before we do that, because we've messed it all up, Karis, your reaction to the Saints taking number 1 pick? Obviously, there was a cry of anger in terms of them being in your division, but now you've had time to think about that whilst I mess up the draft lottery. What's your takeaway from it now?
My takeaway is that New Orleans is a lot scarier next year, whether it's just them taking one guy at the top, moving down and getting more assets for the future, breaking that up into like 4 or 5 different players that'll help them out. That's scary.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I think I can't see the Saints keeping that number 1 pick if there's value there. There's not, they've already got the quarterback. We've talked about this draft not necessarily having that type of quarterback like Wentz. Maybe they find that a receiver or an additional offensive piece to add to it. I'm not too sure, but I think you're going to be in for a tough time if they manage to deal down into some decent assets with that number 1 pick. So should we find out who's got pick number 2? Hopefully it works this time and we can just carry on running through. So the number 2 pick is going to the Cincinnati Bengals.
All right. Where did they come up from? Oh, they came up from 17?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a big jump for the Bengals.
Huge jump.
They had a really good run towards the end of the season as well. They kind of had a bit of a slump when Stewart left, if I remember, and then the new GMs obviously come in and managed to get them ticking over again. So they have the number 2 pick in the draft, a massive jump up there.
Yeah, and they were already a good team, 9-7 in the AFC. So I could, not knowing who's in the class yet, anything big that'll help them could push them into the playoffs next year for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just going through their roster right now, I could see offensive line potentially being upgraded. Maybe a top receiver, potentially. Really anything on defense. You can go any different way with this pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've got several different holes they need to fill anyway. But possibly the offensive lineman will certainly help them out, I think, going forward. So we've got a bit of an issue here in the sense that the return bar is not displaying, and it was earlier today, which is normally the term which means I can run on to the next thing. You see it's been stuck here at input stage.
Let me see.
I'm not sure why. Yeah.
Pause input. Yeah, I'm just trying to see what that code is doing.
Yeah. I'm just going to go and check the previous one as well to see if I've missed a line or something.
I'm not sure right away. We might have to do that pass thing for every pick.
Yeah, it looks like we might have to. I'm not sure why it's not. There's nothing. I've not changed anything there drastically from what Noah sent over. Okay, so we might have to do this a little bit more manual than I was planning to, but there we go. Kairos, I'm going to have to put you in responsible charge for if anyone drops the 5 allocated picks, please shout and we'll have to just add them in.
Okay.
Apologies, but this was working fine earlier.
I'm gonna throw something into Excel real quick.
Yeah,
you can do that.
Right, so we will take out the Bengals.
Before we continue, do you have the sheet where you have the lottery odds?
Yeah.
To me real quick, and I'll be able to throw it in.
Sure.
We can do it that way.
Apologies to everyone watching this. This is going to be a bit of a clunky draft lottery, unfortunately. But we will get there.
I've requested access.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we are up to the Bengals taking the second overall pick. So bear with us 1 second. Let's get ourselves back to there. And we'll have to take out the Bengals, which I think I've already done, and I've already stripped that down to 19.
Yep. So to recap, we have New Orleans jumping from 13 to 1 and Cincinnati jumping from 17 to 2.
Okay, great. So let's rerun this again and see who has the number 3 pick in the CSFL draft. It is going to Kansas City Chiefs. So they've dropped 1 place from their original allocation. A team that had a really good season last year, but really struggled this year. I don't know if you followed that through, Kyrus, but your reaction to Kansas City?
I was mostly surprised to see them go 3-13. They have a top quarterback, top running back, not a bad offensive line, a couple of holes in it, but not too bad. Pretty good receiving core. There's a lot to work with offensively. I think just this pick will almost definitely go defensive, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think the only thing I would say is, I mean, I don't expect Bradford to retire or the likes of Charles, but you never know with this engine. They're both will be over 30 at that point, and that would possibly mean a slight shift in progress for them. But yeah, I completely agree. It's going to go defensive. And Kyrus, can you see what I can see? The bar is back down the bottom. I've not changed anything, but it's appeared.
All right, let's see if it works. We'll see if the next pick works. Yeah.
Do you know what I think that is? I think that's because the logos I picked are slightly too big for the bar the output bar.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to fix that for next year. But yeah. I ran through it all out this morning, and it was all working fine. So I don't know why it's changed. But
yeah, so now the issue we might run into here is this thing still won't know if we've dropped 5 spots.
No. So what we'll have to do at that point is, if you wouldn't mind just shouting to me if they've dropped 5 spots, and
I will.
We'll take them out and we'll rerun the code at the top again. So it means that we've got a fair few remaining teams. We've got the Seattle Seahawks, Oakland Raiders kind of with the top sort of selection here. And we are getting sort of that middle pack of teams sort of starting to materialize now. I mean, I guess if you're one of those, if you're Seattle, you're probably praying that this ends up being the next pick in the draft. But do you think we'll see another team jump up here like the Bengals did?
Maybe not that far, but maybe a team, preferably in the 8 range.
Okay, let's see.
That's my pick. I'm getting greedy over here.
Yeah, let's see what happens. The next pick in the draft is going to the Houston Texans.
All right, 1 pick above mine. Okay, they go from 7 to 4.
So yeah, a little bit of a jump for them there. I did say I just had a feeling the Texans were going to jump in this lottery, but
yep.
They've just recently franchise tagged Andrew Luck. Again, a team that I thought started really strongly at the beginning of the season, but kind of faded away. What do you take on the Texans, and what do you think they're going to need in this offseason to get themselves back up in the American South?
I feel like I'm echoing myself from the Kansas City pick. A lot of talent on the offensive side. Again, you have a top quarterback, Andrew Luck. Sean McCoy is turning 30. He's going to be turning 30, so eventually might need a new running back. Offensive line looks good. Receiving core isn't bad. Can probably upgrade the receiving core, but it would be, again, probably defensive. I'd probably try to go defense on this one.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think there's a lot of teams actually do need a bit of defensive talent coming into their roster, really, going
The
forward.
secondary on this roster is pretty rough. So
yeah, I agree. I think if they get a back or an elite linebacker who can maybe play some of the first of defensive line, then I think that would be a good pickup for them.
All right. Okay. So one of the next two picks has to be Seattle.
Okay, so we'll get the odds back up.
Either this one or the next.
Okay, so let's see who is going to take the next pick in the draft. It is going to Oakland.
Okay. So Oakland goes from 3 to 5. And then now we have to stop this thing and give Seattle number 6.
Yeah, no problem. We can certainly do that. Let's go back up. So we've got to take out the other teams that we've just talked about as well. So the Texans are gone. The Raiders are gone. Kansas are gone.
And we got to
be gone. Yeah. Am I missing any other teams that have already been picked? I don't think I am.
Should have 14 teams left.
Yeah, 14. Yeah, lovely. Okay, so let's before we run this again, let's talk about those two teams. So we've got, as you said, the first one there was Oakland coming into this one. Again, I think another team that's sort of down the bottom that's in a similar sort of position to Seattle and as well, really, actually, probably both in a similar position in that, as I mentioned, had GM changes, had slight roster changes. Both have struggled this year. We'll start with Oakland. I mean, a team that probably could do with some upgrades on the defensive side again, the defensive secondary again, but interested to get your take on where Oakland kind of sit and what they kind of need to get themselves back into the playoff hunt next year.
Yeah, I think while we were talking about the franchise tag earlier, I realized that they have a lot of elite talent that's getting older. They're about to be off of contract. So there's going to be a lot of holes to fill. So I think you can go pretty much any direction with this pick. I don't know if Derek Carr is 100% the guy that they're building around. Maybe if there's a good enough quarterback, you maybe consider replacing him. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I mean, we've seen the Raiders when they did have a good quarterback in Manning, they were up there competing with the very best, and that's probably what's brought them back down that level.
That's definitely part of it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess Seattle, obviously they've dropped the maximum 5 spots, which is never a good position to be in when you've gone 3-13 on the season. But do you think there's some light at the end of the tunnel despite dropping sort of the 5 maximum slots here?
Yeah, I mean, every draft has a pretty good top 6. You can pick somebody at 6 and you're almost always happy about adding them to your team. So, it could have been better, but considering this draft based on name power only, but it doesn't seem to have, the quarterback talent that the last draft had. They're maybe not missing out on any superstar franchise quarterback. No,
and I think that's probably the relief is that if it was last year's draft, you'd probably be in a similar situation to I'm trying to think, I'm trying to think of a team that dropped out of the draft, out of the top 3 again, but I can't remember now. But I think, look, Seattle have got an interesting position. I mean, they've got a huge amount of cap coming off this year as well. So it'd be interesting to see how they use that, to be honest with you, in combination with this. And I think that's going to be one of the things that really decides whether this team makes the jump or not, is whether they spend their money efficiently or not. I think that's going to be...
Yeah, it's another very vet-laden team. Pretty much everybody there is over 27 years old, 28 years old, a lot of 30s. I think maybe the beginning of a teardown, maybe.
Maybe. So let's carry on going forward. Hopefully we can run through this a little bit. So the next pick is going to the Detroit Lions by the Buffalo Bills. So a jump up there, I think, a little bit.
9-7.
Yeah, yep. So a couple of spots. I mean, I think we said on the server with this one that we never anticipated this one to be a lottery pick. We got this one, I think, in a deal with Toasty season or two ago. So yeah, good to see that jump up front from my perspective. But let's keep moving on. Karis, you will shout if there's any that we need to quickly allocate. But
Tampa Bay will either be the next pick or the one after. So
okay, let's see. So the Cleveland Browns have got the next pick.
The next few will actually fall in order, so I'll give you that after. Cleveland was 15th, and they're jumping to 8. This is Cleveland from Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, okay. It is, yeah. So they've jumped up from 8 for 15, so that's a good jump up from them, and a team that I think is probably, in my opinion, I don't know what your take is on Cleveland, Karis, but probably maybe one or two elite players away from really making a stamp for a wild card slot. I think they've got good players in most positions, but probably don't have the ones that are going to win those close games for them. But what's your take on the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, I mean, that division has just gotten harder with Cincinnati jumping. They had a great season not great season, but they had a good season last year. So Cleveland might be playing catch up for a little bit.
Okay.
There's still a lot of different ways they can go with this pick. There's good talent all throughout the roster, but you can always improve. So
yeah, I mean, I think they're probably one of the most flexible teams going into the offseason in that they don't have huge holes they need to fill. Or
linebacker is probably the only huge hole that I can see.
Yeah,
Patrick Willis is coming off the books, and then there's nobody else over 74 overall. So
work there. Yeah, and most of the team is locked in for next year, apart from the couple you mentioned there, and maybe a few others. But they haven't got to worry too much about filling huge gaps. I think if a guy falls to them here at 8, I think they certainly will just bite their hands off and take them. But likewise, I could see them possibly trading this pick away for some future assets again as well, and keeping that building going. So you said the next couple of picks are kind of already predetermined. Do you want to just talk us through what those are?
Yep. Might as well go back to the sheet or go back to the code and mark some of these out.
Yeah. Okay. 1 second.
We've got the next 3 that have dropped 5 spots.
Okay. So, but 1 second, let me just remove remove these ones. And
get Lions out of there. We'll get Cleveland out of there.
Yep. Okay. So who is next on the list?
So the next 3 are Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And Arizona.
Okay.
Those will go 9, 10, and 11.
Okay. Let's have a little chat about those teams then. So obviously Tampa, a team that's in your division, which you'll probably be more familiar than I am with them, but 4-12 this year. Dropping down 5 places is certainly going to put them in a difficult position in that division, because the Saints have just snagged the number 1 pick. But I guess what do you like about the Tampa roster and strategy, and what things do you think they need to possibly improve on in this offseason?
I think order number 1 this offseason is trying to go out and get a quarterback. They're currently relying on Tim Tebow, and I don't think he's the worst quarterback out there, but I think you want a franchise quarterback to go out there with DeAndre Hopkins, Hernandez, I think you need somebody to give those guys the ball.
Yeah, and I'll tell you who I think would be a really good fit for Tampa actually, and maybe I overrate him actually in this engine, and or maybe he just maybe doesn't have the right type of ratings to probably be the type of player that I've got in my head for him. But Robert Griffin Jr. third is definitely back on the trade block this offseason from what we've seen. And, you know, his stock is probably the lowest it has ever been in the CSFL, given that he has well and truly flunked out in Cincinnati as well, again here. I could see him being a nice little fit for Tampa Bay, a good value pickup. I'm not suggesting that they trade this draft pick for him, of course, but just an immediate thing. If they need a quarterback, he's probably one of the guys they could probably buy low and probably sell high if they time it right, if they manage to utilize him to the best of their ability, really.
Yeah, I might wait till the draft for that, but just scout the class, see if there's anyone worthy of a top 10 pick.
Yeah, of course. So moving on, we obviously after Tampa we had the I believe it was Pittsburgh. You said so Toasty's Pittsburgh snagging the 49ers pick in a trade. Just going in there and picking up number 10. Does this pick, in your opinion, get them that little bit closer to the Baltimore Ravens, who have held that American North for such a long time now?
I don't know if it gets them past them, but it definitely everything helps. And there's good talent on this roster, but I don't think it's elite outside of the linebacker core that they've got. They got. And both of those guys were just vet pickups, during the season, Urlacher and Woodley. So
who are both in high candidates for possible retirement as well, given the engine.
It is an older team now that I'm looking through it.
It is. It's an older, experienced team that Toasty put together with a certain strategy and style of play in mind for what he wanted to get out of this defensive-minded team.
So I think this pick is. If a lot of those guys are coming back next year, I think it's pretty likely to be traded.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think if they are coming back, it's a roll of the dice pick to maybe get another quality veteran in or another missing piece and maybe get them a little bit closer to that Ravens team that has dominated that division for such a long time. So we've got obviously the other team that has dropped the maximum, which is the Arizona Cardinals.
That one's
Yeah, they've had a really bumpy road in the CSFL, I have to say, of late. They had some huge free agency pickups last year. Essentially rolled the dice on some big experienced star players, and then essentially filling out the rest of the rotation. Didn't quite work out this year in that they won 4 games, but obviously they've dropped 5 places here. They're picking up pick number 11. What's your take on the Cardinals? Do you think they will probably keep this pick, or do you think they'll try and look to possibly trade one of those star players and move up a couple of places?
I think they keep the pick and then probably try selling off some of these vet pieces and starting over. There's honestly not a ton here to get excited about. So, there's some good vets here that will definitely fetch some good assets. I'm looking at Langford, defensive end. You got Deshaun Jackson, who's a top wide receiver, maybe the top wide receiver in the league. There's 3 or 4 really good vet talents here, and then after that, there's hardly anything. So I'd look at just gutting the roster, finding assets wherever you can for the future, and start building around this number 11 pick.
Yeah, especially given that most of that talent you've mentioned there is locked up on fairly large contracts as well. So it's got to be the right situation as well, really, to try and move some of those guys on.
So it's not too bad. 1 or 2 after this year.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we're back in a position where we can carry on. Just to double check, we've got nine teams left. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
So this one's going to be number 12, and Carolina had the 8th best odds, so we can only fall 12 or 13. So
Okay, cool. So let's see where this pick number 12 is going. It is going to Washington.
I fell most again.
Yeah, you've fallen in one place so far in here. So another team. I mean Washington, another team, 5-11. Again, if I go back a couple of seasons, they were looking like they were going to probably be a consistent playoff team. They essentially, I think, probably rolled the dice away from Pryor now at quarterback and have brought in McElroy. Hopefully, he sticks around end of the season. But a team that's, in my opinion, probably lacking again on the defensive side. I have to say, I think probably need a couple of players in there in terms of even just the defensive line. But what's your take on Washington, who are 5-11 this year?
There's a lot of talent here. I'm going through this roster for the first time in a while, and there's a lot of talent, but it's not a deep roster. So I think there's a lot of positions where they rely on one really good player and then one not very good player. So there's a ton of things you can do with this pick, but they're probably a year or two away from being really good, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I talked to Curtains, the GM of Washington, I think he's in a position now where he's got the talent that he probably will need to be a playoff team. I think it's a case of just actually getting the playbook right for the type of players that he's got on both sides of the ball. I think once he nails that, I think this Washington team's going to be in a fantastic shape and
definitely agree.
In a great position with the Giants probably just starting to age and retool. And the Cowboys have got a couple of big decisions, I think, this offseason to make. So probably a season or two, I think, away from probably possibly taking that division if everything goes okay. That would rely on Pryor probably re-signing and also probably then developing back into the quarterback that he was a couple of seasons ago. Yeah. But I'm excited to see Washington. I think they've got some great potential there.
Yep. They also have the best young linebacker in the league, I think, in Bobby Wagner.
Absolutely.
You've got stars on both sides.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of putting people around those guys.
Yeah. So I believe that the next pick is the maximum 5. Am I right in thinking that? Or have we got to roll the dice once more? Okay, so we'll stop it here again and we'll quickly just remove Washington and Carolina. Takes us back down to 7. So yeah, your take on the drop again. I'm sorry. Unfortunately, you have a bit of bad luck when you do come on for the draft lottery. I'm sure that I'm sure that won't put you off coming back. But I guess let's talk a little bit about your team. I guess going into the off season, you managed to sort of hold on to the division this year. The Saints kind of made that step back in the end. And I guess, what do you feel your team's needing to probably take you into the position of maybe getting back to that Super Bowl again?
I think a lot of it is just going to be replacing some of the aging guys that I'm going to have to let go eventually. Antoine Bethea is going to be 34, one of the fastest safeties in the game that I've had for, I don't know, almost the entire time that this league's been around. So I could go safety, I could go defensive line, which was a big problem for us last year. I'm thinking defense, but every year there's one wide receiver that catches my eye.
Yeah, I mean, you probably have the best, youngest wide receiving core in the league, if I'm being perfectly honest. It is the one thing that absolutely terrifies me when looking at you. It's just you've got 3 decent options already that I'm like, I don't even know how to try and defend that in this game. To be honest, when you've got 3, I think my opinion of the Panthers is that maybe you probably could do with strengthening that offensive line to give Cam Newton a bit more time in the pocket, or maybe look at possibly as you said, replacing some of those older guys in the sort of the defensive side.
Mhm.
But I'm sure even with the pick dropping 5 places, I'm sure you'll manage to pick up some decent talent this offseason to try and keep that division and try and keep that Super Bowl prospect alive.
Hope so.
Okay, so that brings us down to the remaining 7.
Moving on, I'll just list the remaining teams that are out here. This is for pick 14 now. We have the Eagles, who had 11th best odds, 49ers, who had 12th, Indy, who had the 14th best odds, Seattle at 16, and then Philly, New York, and Jacksonville, 18, 19, 20. So,
okay, so let's see who takes pick number 14. That is going to the New York Jets.
All right. So they move up from 19.
That's a big jump for the Jets.
Yep.
Definitely the logo size was the wrong size for some of these guys. Look, you can see the bar's not there. Yeah. It worked smoothly earlier. I promise you, it was fine. So yeah, the Jets. Let's talk about the Jets. New GMs come in. Mr. Statistician, not Zimmer, and took the team to 9-7 this year, which I'll be honest with you, surprised me that the jump the Jets made. A bit like the jump they've made in this draft lottery, moving up to 14. I guess a lot of people will be looking at it and probably saying the only way is up really for the Jets now, given that they've had such a strong season. Would you probably look at moving this pick in the middle-ish of the draft, or if you were sitting in this position, you just got to 9-7, maybe with some of the talent that you might just try and just pick up a player who maybe possibly will drop down from that sort of top 6, top 7 maybe, or how would you kind of play this if you were the Jets GM?
So personally, I was a little bit surprised that they went 9-7 with the roster they have. Again, congratulations. But I think you can upgrade talent pretty much everywhere on the defensive side. So, and offensive line as well. So, anything that can improve the team, go for it.
Yeah, I agree. I think anything can improve the team. I think a receiver would be ideal if they could get a nice young receiver. I think that would be a great situation for them, because that is an area where there is a lot of cost associated with picking up a receiver anyway. So I think if they manage to do that, then they'll be in great shape. Certainly, but a really good jump there by the Jets. So that gets us to our remaining 6 teams. Has anyone dropped the maximum 5 yet, or
not yet?
Carry on?
Philly is 1 away. So if they don't get here, then they'll have to be 16.
Okay, let's have a little look and see who takes pick 15. It is the San Francisco. That's a great typo there by me. San Francisco 49ers from the Cleveland Browns pick have taken pick 15 in the draft.
All right, so they they fell from 12 to 15.
Okay, so a couple of places dropped there.
Pretty close.
Another team that my take on the San Francisco 49ers is that they've got some really, really good talent. A lot really depends on whether Big Ben comes back next year as to where I think this team possibly could end up being. But I guess a division that's pretty much, I would say, open for the taking next year. Despite Stewart and the Rams and having this great season, I think any of those teams with a bit of a decent offseason could possibly take the National West. What do you think, Iris?
Yeah, so I'm looking through here. Most of this team is locked in for next year, minus some guys coming off their rookie contracts, and they've got $50 million to work with, along with this pick, and I think they have some other picks, right, that are outside the lottery. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think they've got. Let me double check that for you. So they've got. They've also got the Tennessee pick, which will be either 31 or 32. And then they've got a second, a couple of thirds, and a fourth. So they can easily bring in some depth pieces there. I think this season, good value depth pieces.
There's a lot of vets around 30 years old. If the goal is playoffs, then it's not out of the question.
Yeah, I agree. I think, but at the same time, as I said, I think if Big Ben comes back, then they're going to have a great shot at taking that division. I think if they lose him, I think it's just a huge hole when you lose a quarterback like that. And I don't know whether they'll be able to get one like that on the open market, really, of that equal talent. That'll be very difficult.
Okay, and then the Eagles dropped the most amount as well. So you got that listed already.
Yeah, we'll come back. Let's come back to the Eagles once their second pick is taken, and we'll talk about it then. I think in terms of perspective of where they both are, but we'll carry on moving forward.
Watching Philly drop from 11 to 16, so that's where we are. Now we got 4 teams left.
Yeah, the Colts have the 50% best odds in this one, and then pretty much fair game to Seattle, Philly, and Jacksonville for jumping up here. So let's see who takes the next pick. That is going to the Colts with 50% chance of taking that. So I guess if they've dropped a couple there.
14 to 17, yep.
Yeah. So the Colts are 7-9 this year. I mean, looking at their roster, I think they could be a great case to probably take a running back in the first round, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure Clay is probably the right answer there. And I think looking across the rest of the rotation and roster on both sides of the ball, I'd be fairly comfortable with where they are. I think they've got a good linebacking core. Maybe the cornerbacks could do with an improvement if there's an elite one that stands out here. But for me, I might be looking at running back in this position if I was the Colts. What about you? What's your take?
Yeah, I'm looking at running back and safety. You have 2 good safeties, and one of them is about to be 35. So might look at safety. Running back's good, and then I think they're in a spot where you just take best player available, and if he happens to be one of those positions, then great.
Yeah, and I think again, like the Colts are in an interesting position. I think that's going to be fun to watch. They're obviously in a highly competitive division, but they had some really good wins this year. I mean, I'll give you some of their wins, which I thought were fairly good. I mean, they beat the Chargers, who we know Chargers had a phenomenal end of season. They beat the Patriots, who obviously had a great season in the end, and that was in week 12, so that wasn't early in the season either. And they also beat Jacksonville. Again, that was early in the season, but they a couple of good teams that I think have got good developing playbooks, and so I could certainly see the Colts, starting to make gains there, and I'm sure this pick will help them in terms of adding a couple of pieces, as you mentioned there. But that division is a nightmare, though, usually, isn't it, Karis? I mean, that's one division I look at, and I think I'm so glad I'm not there.
Yeah, that's the kind of division where if you can't make moves to get better, you kind of need to make moves for the future. So I think it'll depend on if they're able to sign players with their cap space, if they're able to, make a big splash with potentially trading this pick for someone a lot better, try to be aggressive and get into the playoffs, or you go the other direction.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. We've got a couple of picks left to go. We'll just get through these fairly quickly, and then we'll do a bit of a recap of the remaining teams. So Jacksonville have taken the next pick, which I believe is probably 17. Is that right? No, pick 18. Sorry.
Yep.
So a little bit of a jump there for them. I think they have the 19 pick or something like that. I think it was.
They were last to 20. They're all tied.
Okay.
Everything had 9 wins. So yeah.
And they, of course, have an image that is far too big for the return bar to come back down. So we'll have to reset. So that leaves us with the Seahawks and Philadelphia. And let's see who takes pick 19. That is going to the Seattle Seahawks. And that does mean that pick 20 is going to the Philadelphia Eagles. So we have a couple of things to talk about there. We've talked a little bit about Seattle, so we won't go back to them, I think. Let's talk about Jacksonville first then. So pick 18 had a crazy end of season, sort of end half a season really. Got them, that defense was just ticking along from what I could see, and they managed to sort of find a bit of a rhythm on the offense, which dragged them up from bottom 5 team to borderline wildcard place.
Schedule looks like 2 different seasons.
It really does.
5, and then they won like 8 of their last 9 games.
Yeah, I mean, from that fantastic run, I mean, do you think that's a case of the GM Kev just getting it clicking now and just getting the right players in and just getting a sense of it and, going to be really competitive this year? Or is it a case of like Kansas City the previous year where they had a great run, but they just fell away this year?
I think when it happens in the second half of the year, you can kind of expect that someone's figured something out, figured out how to use their guys, adapted to the new engine. So I could very well see Jacksonville being for real next year.
Yeah, I mean, and they do have and they have obviously a phenomenal rookie quarterback in Dak Prescott as well. So they've got that position sorted.
I'm looking at offensive line here. The tackles are not good. So I think that's they got great guards, great center. Just I would use one of these picks on a tackle almost for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think they need some offensive line help, and that's probably a natural progression from getting the right quarterback in, and then you get the offensive line, and you get the other pieces around it, and I can see it all moving forward for them. And Jacksonville, I think, are going to be a really competitive team again in the American South. So we'll see how that one plays out.
Crazy division.
It's mad. Let's talk about Philadelphia then. So would you mind just quickly recapping what 2 picks they had? So they've obviously got pick 9. Is it 19? I think, and I'm not
16
sure.
And 19.
16, 19. So two picks in that sort of top end of the draft. 5 and 11 this year. I mean, if it was me, I'd probably just pick both of those players and just slot them into whatever the best position available is and just run with that for a season because
I agree. Yeah,
I think they could easily turn that roster around that they've got in there from being 5 and 11 to probably being a 9 and 7 team, and then probably that's good enough in the NFC to probably take a wild card slot.
Yeah, it's not a bad roster actually. I'm not seeing anything terrible anywhere. I think offensive line can definitely improve again. Maybe I'd say offensive line if you had to pick something.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree. I think maybe offensive line, but I would just they're in a great position because they got 2 picks here. They can also probably put together a decent enough package to move up if they find that truly elite guy that's maybe dropping or maybe in that sort of top 10 or something. I think that's a great position to be in for Philadelphia with those 2 picks, despite them dropping a couple of places each.
I'm also a fan of building my entire offensive line in one season. So, but yeah, no, I think you could upgrade every position on this offensive line if you wanted to.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they could do that, that certainly puts them in a great position. And that kind of brings us to a close in terms of the draft picks. Apologies for the technical issues that we've had, but we'll fix that for next season and get the right sized logos in. Someone remind me before the start of next season, please. But yeah, Kairos, I guess your take on the draft. Any sort of big movers and shakers that you want to sort of call out at the end here?
Still, Saints getting number 1 is scary.
Yeah,
it's what impacts me right away. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what they do. Whether it's a trade down for a bunch of assets, or they just go ahead and pick the top guy in the draft. They could do anything.
Yeah, I think it's one of those drafts as well. Prior to last year's, you had the quarterbacks in there that had name value, and everyone kind of had that assumption that they were going to be the top 3, top 5 picks pretty much. This year, I think a lot of it's going to come down to sort of scouting and looking, because there's not that sort of standout name that's really good enough to probably be that number 1 pick from what we can see at the moment. So I think we could see a really crazy draft this year where people maybe scout different areas and just find different types of players. And I think there'll be a lot of jockeying in that first 15 sort of positions really for maybe working out who the top 6, 7 are, then that middle 7 or 8, and then everything else will kind of flow from there. But I think that top 15 is going to be fascinating to watch, see how that plays out after scouting.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it.
Absolutely, I can't wait. Karis, thank you very much for hanging around and solving not solving, but helping me with the technical issues and drops, etc. I'm sure it'll be great to have you back next season talking draft lottery, and best of luck with yourself and the Carolina Panthers this offseason, bringing that team hopefully back into Super Bowl contention next year.
Hope so. Good luck as well.